let me introduce our esteemed speaker. He came from far, far away. Las Palmas. The Vietnam War was not like World War II or Korea in the treatment of the POWs. North Vietnam Communist regime did not honor the established Geneva Convention rules in 1929 and later updated in 1949. Because there was no official declared war, they considered American troops as invaders, referring to shot down captured pilots as criminals and Yankee air pirates, and not as prisoners of war or POWs. Thus, the harsh, inhumane treatment that was meted out to them. Gary Lueders flew 123 KC-135 combat air refueling missions during Vietnam, where 2 of his pilot training classmates and several friends were shot down. As a Palm Springs Air Museum docent in the Korea Vietnam hangar, Gary's specialty is the POW MIA bracelet display curated by Dr. Dave Thompson. Gary's chronology, he was in the Air Force from 64 to 69. Home base was March Air Force Base, right down the street. KC-135A Stratotanker, 123 combat air refueling mission during Vietnam, and then American Airlines, my favorite airline, from 1969 to 2000. ATP type rated 707, 727, 757, 767, MD-80s, FK100, what's that, the Fokker?
Yeah.
Okay, and the Citation Lear, and it's been in the old bold and on the board since 1997, and a docent since 2014. So without further ado, let me introduce our speaker, Gary.
Thank you. Really good to be among friends here.
I'm gonna get really close to this microphone.
Okay.
And talk really loud. And here's the up down right here.
Okay, let me figure this out here. Okay, let's see here. First of all, can you hear me up here?
Gotta talk really loud.
Okay, so,
Pick it up and hold it. Right?
yeah, let me try that.
Yeah, that was easier for me. Just get it right up your lips. It's in your noisy airplane.
Yeah. Okay, there's, first of all, think about you're a pilot, you're taking off for your mission, and you're not going to come back. You left all your buddies back on the ship or at your base somewhere in Vietnam, and you want to get home to your guys, go to the old club, have a drink or something, but not going to happen. Think about that. Okay. There were jungle prisons as well as prisons in Hanoi. They're totally different in how they were treated. The jungle prisons, pretty much starvation, malnutrition, diseases, no medical, malaria, scurvy, dysentery, gingivitis. They were tortured, but not for the reason that the guys were tortured up in Hanoi. In the jungle area, they were involved with re-education. The prisoners were constantly taught. They had education camps that they tried to teach them the way that the communists thought, and then they would maybe release them. In Hanoi, they were tortured for different reasons. The reason was for find out where's the next bombing mission going to happen. All those kinds of military questions that the North Vietnamese in Hanoi wanted to know. Okay, so let me get this going here. Okay, here we go. So I flew KC-135s in Vietnam. Thank you very much, Steve, for telling all those things. Okay. There were 662 military POWs, 138 civilian POWs, 1,000 KIAs that remains were returned. There were 1,600 still unaccounted for still. In Hanoi, there was just not the Hanoi Hilton was known as the Wallow Prison. There were several other prisons in the area, about 10 of them, I think. This is the display at the museum. Dr. Dave Thompson is a curator there, and he put this whole thing together. The first bracelet that was donated to the museum was this bracelet by for Norm Smith, donated by Bob Lilac. Thank you very much, Bob. And he has it right there. That's what started the whole thing over at the museum. There's Norm there. He was F-104 pilot and shot down in 1966. And Bob flew a similar mission that same day. Correct, Bob? That's worth another talk we could do sometime. I'm wearing a bracelet. John Bush, we call him Jack, one of my pilot friends, pilot from pilot training. And he was shot down. He was flying a mission, F-4s out of Da Nang, and he was shot down. I happened to be in Da Nang 2 weeks before he was shot down. We got together at the O Club, had a good time together talking about back in the pilot training days. By the way, his remains did return in 1988. Yeah. They're still searching today, by the way, for remains in Vietnam. He's buried in Arlington Cemetery. This bracelet on my right arm is my buddy I flew with after Vietnam, American Airlines. When they were all released in 1973, many of them came with the airlines. And so this is Bernard Talley. We called him Bunny. His nickname was Bunny. And we flew together on the 727. I was senior to him. He was a flight engineer at the time. I was a co-pilot. We had some really kind of fun times together, sharing stories. By the way, I got to see his wrist, scars from manacles that he had on his wrist from being a POW. I remember seeing this huge pickle jar in his house, maybe a couple hundred bracelets. So I contacted his wife, and she sent me this picture of this huge pickle jar. Understand there was not just one made for one person. There was millions made throughout the whole time this was done. The bracelet program started in 1973. They were actually started by the wives of the POWs wanting to know, where's my husband? They were asking the military. Either the military didn't know or wouldn't say. So they started really agitating, raising hell. And there was actually some college girls in LA that came up with the idea, well, the names that we know, let's put them on bracelets. Thinking it was just going to be for college kids. It went viral way before the term viral ever got into our thinking. Everybody had to have one. I made this shadow box for Bunny when he passed away a couple of years ago. That's at the museum. John Murphy, he was one of my classmates as well in pilot training. He was shot down flying F-4s in 1972, pretty close to the end of the war. And Mike Dawson, who's listed up there, he was at the museum one day and saw John's picture on the wall. And he said, I know that guy. As it turns out, before John went to Vietnam, he was an instructor pilot at Reese Air Force Base, FT-38s. And so Mike Dawson was one of his students. So he donated the bracelet. He bought and donated the bracelet. Okay, the first POW was shot down, Ev Alvarez. 1964. Think of that, 1964. 8.5 years in prison. He went in age 26, came out age 35. Just think about that for a minute. You're past. That's twice as long as the World War II. He was a prisoner. Many years in solitary confinement. First Air Force pilot, Aiden Lockhart, March 12th, 1965, flying at F-100. That was the start of the Rolling Thunder missions. That was bombing missions started in 1965 and it lasted until 1968, Rolling Thunder. Next was the Spring High mission of 1965, July. In retaliation of the first shoot down of a military pilot by a SAM missile, the government decided we need to take that out. It's actually President Johnson. He said, take those out. So Spring High mission, there was 48 F-105s, two did an Aerobart. They were attacking SAM sites, and it turned out to be a flak trap because the communists had moved the SAMs, and so the F-105 rolled in to take them out. Turns out there was 5 105s lost. 3 pilots were KIA, 2 pilots, Parsley Purcell and Kurgberg, were POWs, and Frank Tulo was on that mission, and he survived. Where's Frank? Yay, there he is over there. That's worth of a presentation in itself, right? By the way, you see this guy up here with the fighter pilot type mustache? That's Frank up here. Okay, get this thing going here. Okay, Robbie Reisner, shot down in 1965, but in April of 65, Time Magazine had his picture on the cover. Think of that. Here he was in Vietnam, but the media being what it is, they were publicizing it, the fact that here's a Korean War ace is now fighting in Vietnam. So the communists were waiting for him. They knew he was coming, eventually going to be coming, hopefully, and they bagged him. So he was in solitary confinement for 4.5 years. Think of that, solitary confinement. Not knowing if his family knows where he is or even if he's alive. So it's just staggering to think about 4.5 years. Not being able to even talk to anybody, his own language anyway. Okay, James Hughes, F-105, May of 1967. Notice his head is all wrapped up. So he was burned during the ejection and wound up in a village. And there was young girls who actually treated him for his wounds, his burns on his face and head. Okay. Lieutenant Colonel Hines, 1967. So this picture was an AP wire photograph. The communists claimed that was the 2000th aircraft shot down. But in 1967, that's highly speculative whether that was really that many at that time. They also used images of POWs for the stamps that they had. Wayne Wardell, 1967. We suspect that this is a propaganda photograph that they were putting out to make the Vietnamese look like they were good guys. This was a bad guy. The code of conduct, there were 3 of the 6 articles that really applied to the POWs. We all know what that is, don't disclose anything, only name, rank, serial number, and date of birth. The communists had different ideas. As Steve said, they were not in a war. This was not a war because it was not declared. So therefore, they are considered criminals. Yankee air pirates versus POW prisoners of war. There was no war, they claim. Okay, Jeremiah Denton. You might know about this. He was going to be interviewed. He was shot down in 65 and interviewed in 1966 to the international press. So he blinked out torture very slowly, T-O-R-T-U-R-E, very slowly. And it turns out the Navy intelligence picked up on that, and they got the message that they were being tortured. Hanoi March, July 1966. They were handcuffed together, 2 at a time. There was 50 POWs, tens of thousands of angry people, citizens were marched. They marched through the citizens on the main street in Hanoi. They were being thrown, hit, kicked, and thrown rocks and bottles at them. So, and spit at, it was terrible, terrible conditions that they were put through. They had guards on each side with rifles and bayonets and everything. Military intelligence picked up on that, and that was a big turning point, that this is not good, obviously. Here you see Robbie Reisner, Alvarez, Carnes, Berg, Bob Shoemaker, Smitty Harris back there. Okay, these 2 guys here, Hayden Lockhart and Phil Butler. Notice that the handcuffs on their wrists there, can you see that? And he's holding up his buddy because he was hit in the head, almost knocked out, cut his head, and they had to hold him to get through all the citizens that were very angry. Okay, these 2 guys here. Cole Black was a new POW, been there about 15 days, and Chuck Bird was there about 3 months. So he says, do the Vietnamese do this often? And Chuck says, no, only on Wednesdays. So they did have some kind of a sense of humor. Okay, Richard here, extreme bow. The military intelligence picked up on that too. He was very robotic when they forced him to come before international press. Very extreme bowing. So that's not right. That is that's not normal. He should not have been doing that in the extreme manner that he did. Okay, this picture here was in October's Life magazine, 1967. Okay, the one picture that made the cover of Life magazine, they bleaked out his fingers. On the other side, you can see his middle fingers being exposed to his contempt to the guards. So that picture did not make, it was on international press, but did not make the news of Life magazine because they wanted to be so correct, right? Okay, Mike McGrath. He was shot down 1967, POW for 6 years. He was a sketch artist, and he's a retired captain and wound up as a retired United Airlines captain as well. And I contacted him. He gave me permission to use these pictures. Answering questions, anything that pissed off the guards, they were tortured, spanked, beaten. during the wintertime in Hanoi. It wasn't freezing, but it was pretty cold, probably 70s, 60s and 50s. This guy here is tied to a bench, and the guard is thinking he's funny, and he's splashing him with water, making him cold. Okay, this right arm is extremely up and tied to his neck. If he relaxed anywhere, he'd be choking himself. Dislocated shoulders is fairly uncommon with the tortures that they did. This is one of the extreme ones. They call them rope torture. Many dislocated shoulders, manacles on their feet. Actual manacle from the Hanoi Hilton. Tough, just really tough. Two-person cell, one honey bucket. Some of the cells, many of the cells were one person, maybe 7 by 4 feet, not much room at all. And to stay active when you're solitary confinement, you had to put your mind to work to relieve the tension of not being able to talk to anybody for many periods of time. So also, this is one cell, room 18 at the Hanoi Hilton. They actually strung guys up. They were all tied together. I mean, their arms were back behind them, couldn't move, and they were actually hung up there for a while. Hanoi Hilton, Wallow Prison. French built that in the 1880s. 15-foot wall, 15-foot high walls, 3 foot thick, topped with shards of glass, barbed wire, and electric wire. No escapes from that prison. Ho Chi Minh died in 1969. That was a turning point for the POWs. They were kind of eased up on their torture. This prison with 1970, we did a raid to try to rescue all the POWs there, but as it turns out, the communists had removed the prisoners from that prison because of different reasons. The water was bad or no water. And so anyway, they moved and there was no prisons there, but that was a major, major turning point for the prisoners. They moved all the prisoners and all those other prisons around Hanoi. They moved them to large rooms within the Hanoi Hilton, 40 to 50 people in a room. A big moral boost for the POWs. They could talk to each other, exercise, play games. They had classes. My buddy Bunny learned French when he was there. One of the other POWs knew French pretty well, so he taught that class. Other guys knew history. They taught history. Some taught poetry, engineering, and they were able to have church services. So it was a big boost, 1970, for these guys, when you're figuring that they were in solitary confinement for many, many months at a time. Exercise was very important. My buddy Bunny Talley, he holds the camp record of 7,233 deep knee bends in one day. So think of that. Then there were other guys who were doing push-ups, sit-ups, everything else. So that's why if you remember the videos when they came out back from Hanoi, they seemed like they were in pretty good shape because they really were. Their morale, their fitness, and everything else improved. Understand these guys are young guys too. So it was very important for them to exercise their minds. John McCain, you all know about him. Okay, this bracelet was donated by Martha Atterbury. Here she is. I took her picture a couple of years ago. She was at the museum standing right next to that picture of his story and her story as well. She was in the 5th grade in 1972, and she happened to get a bracelet and she donated to the museum. Smitty Harris, what a great guy. He donated his own bracelet, and he's been to the museum before. He wrote the book Tap Code, but he brought the tap code to all the POWs. So here's how the tap code works. First of all, he learned this tap code at Stead Air Force Base survival training. Those of you who are in military, like myself, I went to Stead for training. Okay, so he was in the class. They were talking about, the instructor was talking about back in the day that other POWs, how they communicated. And the instructor said they tapped on the walls or the pipes, especially in Korea. They had in barracks, World War II also, there was barracks, so they were tapped on the walls and the pipes. So Smitty's got the instructor after class. He said, well, how does it work tapping on the walls? Because Morse code, you got the dashes. How do you tap a dash? So he explained to it. What they did was, next picture, whoops, got the wrong way. Okay, this is the way the tap code works. Divided the alphabet into 26 grid situations. C and K are the same letters. And so you tap down and then across for the second tap. So for example, God bless you, that's GBU. They understand they abbreviated a lot of it. So tapping down 2, and then, so first down 2, and then next 2 over the G, and then tap 1 for the A, or I'm sorry, B, down the first letter, and then tap twice for the second letter, B. So, and then U is 4 down on the left 4, and then across 5 for taps 5 times for the U. And HIT was hang in there. They would communicate with fellow POWs when they knew that one of the guys had gone to interrogation and tortured and came back to his cell. They would tap HIT, hang in there, because they all knew that these guys had gone through the same thing and tortured, and understand that because of the code of contact, they didn't want to give any military information, but they all probably did in some way or another. And so that was a way for encouraging their fellow POWs to hang in there. And God bless you. Oops, went the wrong way again. Typical guy in a cell. They would tap, and then he put his cup so he could hear what's going on the other side. To understand that despair and loneliness when you're in a solitary confinement, not talking to anybody, and you knew that at least somebody on the other side was still there and could be one of your friends that you flew with. John Borling, he composed poetry in cells. He wrote a book afterwards, Taps on the Wall, Poetry in Hanoi Hilton. And somebody asked him when he came back, how was it like up there? That was a typical question. And he said, there were optimists and pessimists. The pessimists thought that we would die up there and they wouldn't even send our bodies home. The optimists said they were sure they would send our bodies home. And so, okay, Frank Anton, he was a helicopter pilot, and he got shot down in 1968 down south. And he wrote this book, Why Didn't You Get Me Out? He was in jungle prisons down south. Okay, when you're in a jungle prison, like I mentioned earlier, it's not like being in Hanoi Hilton. Starvation, everything else. And it was tough conditions to being able to just be alive. Also in the prisons back there then was Captain Floyd Kirshner, and also a crossover Marine named Bobby Garwood. You might have heard about him in the past. He showed up later in 1979, I think it was, court-martialed, everything else. And so Frank Anton testified at Bobby Garwood's trial. Also, there were German nurses there. I'll talk about them in a minute. But starvation and dysentery, tough conditions. What was interesting is that, you guys know about this aircraft right here? Okay.
No delays for those.
Frank said one night there was a full moon, and there was, understand there were in the jungle, there's 3 layers of canopy of the trees up there. So during full moon, he felt like there was a shadow just passed over him and a very faint sound that sounded like a distant lawnmower. A week later, here comes a swarm of helicopters. And the Vietnamese had round up all the POWs to relocate them, run them into the jungle. And Frank looked up and actually made eye contact with one of the infantry captain that was in the helicopter looking down at him. So he wrote this book, Why Didn't You Get Me Out? They marched him eventually up to the Hanoi Hilton along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. During the debriefing of him after, when he got home, the debriefers showed him a picture of himself on the on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. So they knew where he was. Very discouraging. Another picture of the Quiet Star, pretty interesting aircraft. This book was written by one of the surviving German POWs that was there. Understand that the Germans had a military, not a military operation, a Red Cross operation, like they were called the Aid Service to Malta. And so these 5 people were on a Sunday afternoon drive. They had a Jeep. They wanted to go out and go visit in the jungle a little bit and go visit a village. Typical of young women, young men. Let's go out and see the countryside. They were captured. Monica Schwinn and Bernhard, what's his name here? Bernhard Dial. Turns out they were 62 days in captivity before they got to the Hanoi Hilton. So 3 of them died. So think about that. Especially you women out there, think about feminine hygiene. You're in a prison and no medication, nothing at all. Tough conditions. This is George and another German nurse taking care of citizens. I went the wrong way. Okay. Monica and Bernhard being released, very happy. Here's Bernhard celebrating because when they got to the Philippines, there was a group of Germans who knew he was coming. The publicity was ahead of them, and they were speaking German to him. So he was very happy to hear German voices again. Monica again. Next month, snake pilot, Randy Zarn. He's one of our docents at the museum. He's going to talk about snake pilot flying cobras. Interesting that one of the missions he did in May of 1970, he flew over Cambodia and he actually saw a POW camp. There was high fences, guard towers, and looked like a basketball court had laid out on the grounds of the POW camp. They returned a week later many helicopters were going to try to rescue him. It turns out when they got there, they were gone. So they must have known that they were coming because he had flown with his load crews, flew over the camp there. Dean Dengler, pretty interesting guy. This guy, he was shot down in 1966 in Laos. Extreme conditions again. 7 of his fellow prisoners escaped, overtook the guards and killed them, and they escaped. He was the only one to survive. He was flying at AD over Laos and was shot down. Only survivor. AD there. Jungle prison camp. He was also tortured and starved quite a bit. Book about him there. This is Colonel Gene Diedrich. He was the guy who was out searching. He was the CO of the 1st Air Commando Squadron in Pleiku. He flew 402 combat missions into A1, and he actually flew searching for Diegler, and he actually saw him and called in the helicopter to come rescue him. So he says that finding Diegler was an act of God, and he was a walking survivalist. There was a book about him called Rescue Dawn, and a film in 1906 about that rescue. Colonel Diedrich is, whoops, went the wrong way again. Colonel Diedrich was a friend of Bob Blalock's. So he was at the museum one day, and he and his son, and they told me about the rescue and that he knew Bob Blalock because the colonel was with the test group up in Edwards. Okay, so I took this picture and sent it to Bob. I'm the wrong way again. Okay. Lance Saigon, F-4, flying out of Da Nang, shot down on 11 November of 1967. He was a Medal of Honor winner. He survived the injuries that he got. He had broken legs, really bad shape. They were about to pick him up. He had helicopter radio contact, and he waved off the chopper because they were going to drop a personnel down to help him get up. And so he waved them out. Then there was some bad weather, and he was stuck in the jungle for basically 46 days. He actually crawled out, but he didn't crawl on his knees because his leg was all bad shape. He actually kind of like scooted along on his back and his side, scooted, and he came out onto a clearing of a road, and he had his radio with him. He was going to make contact, but as it turns out, that day was Christmas Day, and there was no flying, so there was no airplanes out there, and the communists caught him and put him in a prison. He was able to escape from that prison on his own. He overcame the guard that was there, did a karate chop, and almost killed the guy. He was recaptured. Then he was put in another prison with Guy Jeter and Bob Craner. And so they actually helped him medically. He was all cut up and everything because of the thorns, harsh conditions that he was going through. They finally put him on a truck, and flatbed truck in the back, and they were bouncing along. They went up to the Hanoi Hilton. He talked about escape up there. And so Major Kramer put him in for a Medal of Honor, and Colonel John Glenn, one of the senior officers, confirmed that Medal of Honor, and eventually he was awarded the Medal of Honor. Here's a picture of, this is the statue in honor of him at the Air Force class of 1965, Medal of Honor winner. Good. Another guy that was pretty interesting that I want to share with you is Doug Hedsdahl. He was just a lowly seaman on a ship. He was on the Canberra ship. They were shelling the coast at night. He went up topside to see what's going on. He got blown overboard. Here he is, no ID, nothing, floating in the Gulf of Tonkin. He was picked up by fishermen. And his cover story was that I knew nothing. I'm just a lowly kid, probably 19, 20 years old. So the Vietnamese finally decided that they call him the incredible stupid one, because he knew nothing, but he was very, very smart. Whoops, he's keep going the wrong way. Okay. So what he did was he memorized 256 names of a memory jogging tune called Old MacDonald Had a Farm. So he memorized all the names, and they also gave him free reign of the camp. So they assigned him to like sweep the courtyard out there. But he was able to sweep, and the sweeps were indicating to his fellow POWs who were probably looking through the cracks in their walls and everything, that he was able to sweep codes to these other guys. So he disabled 5 enemy trucks by pouring sand in the gas tanks. And the leading officers of the POWs told him that he will be released. So the communists released a couple other guys along with him. So he came back and told the Pentagon all the names that he knew, and he went to peace talks and confronted the enemy, the communists, like, you torched us, you guys have treated us bad and everything. So it was really good that he did a lot of good things for the POWs.
Can I add that story?
Yeah.
Joe Craig was in prison for 6.5 years. Is the guy that taught him the name.
Okay.
He didn't want to do it. So Joe said, I'll tell you what, you'll learn the Navy names first.
What was your friend's name? Yeah. Yeah. They used memory jogging, like the Old MacDonald Had a Farm. So he was able to learn all those names. Thank you for that. Okay. Okay. Christmas bombing in 1972. I mean, that was a major boost morale-wise for the guys in the jail, in the prison. Think of that. All that line, here comes Christmas, and we're bombing the heck out of them. Finally, Operation Homecoming, February to March 1973. They were finally able to be released. They wanted to look sharp, military bearing, showing discipline. The communists had given them these jackets to wear to look very military-like, and a little satchel they could carry, stuff like that, anything they wanted to save. Some of them brought their cups that they had, other little things that they had. Some of them carried their jackets, their striping uniforms that they were given to wear as they were prisoners. Of course, there's McCain coming home. Okay. They all got on the C-141s, and they were pretty quiet until after it got airborne, and the aircraft commander said, "We are now feet wet." Big cheers went up. Think of that, man. Whoops. Okay. This is the organization, POW MIA is not, you don't see MIA in this flag. This is the NAM POW organization flag. Notice the head is raised high, symbolizing hope and reverence. Returning with honor is their code versus this is the POW MIA flag. The head is down. And they formed a 4th Allied POW wing. That's the Korea War, World War II, excuse me, World War I, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. So this is their symbol, return with honor. So POWs did not have many of these Christmas days, but think of that. So from me to you, Merry Christmas, everybody. Thanks for listening. Anybody? Anybody have questions? Yeah.
Yeah, quick one. So have you been to Vietnam?
No, I have not. Have you?
Yes.
What'd you think of it?
Not a fun place to live.
Anybody else? Questions? Okay. Yeah.
Were any of the aerial refuelers shot down?
No aerial, no KC-135s were shot down. Understand that we were flying south and we would be up over Thailand, over Laos, taking them north. But as it turns out, as we got further north, we had radar covered over the whole area. So if a MiG popped up, we would turn south and the fighters that were with us would go north and go after them. So no tankers were lost. Okay, over here, yeah.
Can you easily go back to that quiet aircraft slide?
Which slide?
Quiet air,
The flight aircraft, the Lockheed.
one.
Oh,
Yeah, the one with the very complex propeller.
Yeah.
6 blades, 7 blades.
yeah.
So this is a very short motion. I was involved with our aircraft. You may have heard me talk about the Apache. The Apache helicopter, the boat was responsible for the most of the best flying aircraft. So,
Your phone's going off. Jet tugs. Jet tugs. Okay.
And that aircraft is.
Okay.
Yep.
Ed Brown was-
Okay, here it is here.
I got it.
Yeah.
Hold on. Good job.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Didn't want to send it to Vietnam, but we were friends for 4 years. I first knew him when he was a post-sec. Went on to become a major general, and he was the savior.
I want to give these books away. It's on this table here.
Okay.
I'm going to offer it to everybody to take one.
Okay, terrific.
Here's an amazing story. Making salt for service. How about this problem? The amazing thing, he was very, very good at program development. That's it. And that aircraft was completely restored. I was there, I shot video of that talking about the effort. And today, go to the museum of flight, you will see that aircraft hanging from the table. It's amazing technology, and that night vision is the precursor of what you see on the action today.
Thanks, Steve.
Hey,
Bob?
Gary, a comment for those of us that flew fighters in Vietnam, especially in North Vietnam. The KC-135 that you flew was the most important airplane in the whole war.
Well, of course. Yay.
And you talked about Norm Schmidt. Norm went to Hanoi and 1 year later was taken away for interrogation and did not come back. Norm was tortured to death. Of those 500 guys that you talked about, roughly 500, about 62 did not come back because of torture to death by the American. Thank you for your.
That's GBU right here. God bless you. Yeah, yeah.
Just a few of them there, very important things for a long time. And I didn't know that's all about it. I just happened. Incredible. Yeah, they split the granddaughter of Amazing Day. And if everybody probably knows Dave Thompson, he's done a wonderful job. It's unprecedented.
Exactly. And that's a whole story presentation in itself. So maybe Bob can do that. By the way, on the table over here as you go, there's a whole bunch of books, my library of about POWs. So feel free to take one and read it and pass it on to somebody else or give it back to the museum or give it back to me later. So there they are over there. And be sure to sign the post.